My older brother Marcus tried to destroy my career to boost his own, but his plan backfired so spectacularly that he ended up destroying himself instead. I'd spent 5 years grinding at Patterson and Associates, one of the biggest consulting firms in the country. Started as a junior analyst straight out of college, pulling 80-hour weeks, taking projects nobody else wanted, building relationships with the difficult clients everyone avoided. My performance reviews were perfect. My project completion rate hit 98%. I'd brought in 3 major accounts in the past year alone, worth over $2 million in revenue. When the senior director position opened up, everyone knew I was getting it. My boss Linda had pulled me aside 3 weeks earlier and told me the job was mine if I wanted it. $60,000 raise, corner office on the executive floor. Finally enough money to stop renting my cramped studio and actually buy a place. I mentioned it at family dinner that Sunday. Just casual conversation over my mom's pot roast. My parents went crazy with excitement, asking about the new responsibilities and when I'd start. My younger sister Amanda hugged me. Marcus sat there with his tight smile, pushing green beans around his plate, barely saying a word. He called me 2 days later asking weird questions about Patterson and Associates. What was the culture like? Were there openings? Could I recommend him? I thought he was just curious, maybe looking for career advice. I sent him a posting for a manager role in a different division, even offered to pass his resume to HR. He thanked me and said he'd think about it. The next week I found out he'd applied for my job. Not the manager position I'd sent him, my senior director role, the one I'd been working toward for 5 years. He'd gotten an interview with the VP of our division, someone I'd never even met, completely bypassing normal procedures. Turned out he went to college with the VP's son and leveraged that connection to jump the line. I called him immediately, told him what the hell was he thinking applying for my position. He said it wasn't my job yet, that the role was open to anyone, that I didn't own it. I reminded him I'd been working there for 5 years. He said consulting was consulting. His experience was just as relevant. When I told him he knew this was supposed to be my promotion, he said if I was confident I'd get it, I shouldn't be worried unless I thought he was actually more qualified. That's when I knew this wasn't casual interest. He was actively trying to take what I'd earned. I went to Linda the next morning. She looked uncomfortable when I brought it up, admitted Marcus had interviewed well and the VP was impressed. I asked if I was still her top choice. She said yes, but the VP wanted to interview both candidates before deciding. My stomach dropped. The sure thing I'd been promised suddenly wasn't sure anymore. I found out later what Marcus had done in that interview. He'd spent the entire time subtly undermining me, told the VP I was too focused on client relationships and not enough on profit margins, said I was popular but not strategic, claimed I'd been coasting on early success instead of innovating. None of it was true, but it was subtle enough to plant doubt. Then he went further. He somehow dug up a project from 2 years ago that had gone over budget. It was a complicated situation where the client kept changing requirements mid-project, but we delivered quality work and they'd renewed their contract for 3 more years. I documented everything properly at the time. Marcus brought it up in his second interview, framed it as an example of my poor project management and financial oversight, made it sound like I'd nearly cost the company a major client through incompetence. The VP started asking Linda questions, wanted to review my project files. My guaranteed promotion was suddenly under a microscope. I called Marcus and told him exactly what I thought of his tactics. He said he was just being honest about my performance, that if I couldn't handle competition, maybe I wasn't ready for leadership. I told him he was lying to steal my job. He said he was highlighting legitimate concerns, that I should focus on defending my record instead of attacking his. I realized arguing was pointless. He'd convinced himself he was the victim, that I'd had unfair advantages, that he deserved this more than I did. So I stopped fighting him directly and started building my defense. First, I scheduled a meeting with the VP, brought my complete portfolio from 5 years, showed him concrete numbers, revenue generated, client satisfaction scores, team performance metrics. I addressed the budget issue head-on, showed the documented client requirement changes, pointed out the client had been with us for 3 years since that project with 0 complaints. Then I reached out to every client I'd ever worked with, asked for honest feedback about working with me. Within 3 days, I had 15 detailed emails from senior executives at major companies praising my work, my responsiveness, my ability to solve complex problems. I forwarded them all to the VP with a simple note saying I thought he might find them relevant. but I knew I needed more. I needed to deal with Marcus directly. I started documenting everything, saved every email, every text where he revealed his tactics, built a file showing exactly what he was doing. Then I did something risky. I reached out to 3 people who'd worked with Marcus at his current firm. Not to badmouth him, just to ask honest questions about his work style and accomplishments. What I discovered was fascinating. Marcus had exaggerated almost everything on his resume. Projects he claimed to have led, he'd been a minor contributor, revenue numbers were inflated. One person told me Marcus had been passed over for promotion twice due to interpersonal issues with his team. I sat on this information, waiting for the right moment. That moment came when Marcus made his fatal mistake. He sent an email to the VP claiming he'd heard from sources that one of my current clients was unhappy and considering pulling their contract. Suggested this showed I was losing my edge. The problem? It was completely made up. The client was thrilled with our work and had just signed a contract extension. I had emails proving it. Marcus had gotten so desperate to undermine me that he'd resorted to fabricating evidence. I forwarded his email to Linda along with the client's recent praise and signed contract extension. Wrote one line asking if we needed to discuss this. Linda called me an hour later. She was livid. Told me the VP was aware and Marcus was being removed from consideration. I asked what happened. She said making false claims about company projects was an automatic disqualifier. That the VP had called the client directly to verify Marcus's concerns and discovered none of it was true. I felt relieved but also sad. This was my brother who just torpedoed his own career because he couldn't handle me succeeding. But it got so much worse for Marcus. The VP didn't just remove him from consideration. He called the CEO of Marcus's current firm, mentioned the interview situation, how Marcus had made false claims about a competitor's client to secure a position. Word got back to Marcus's boss. They started investigating his claims about his own projects and accomplishments. Once they started looking, they found a pattern of exaggeration and credit-taking going back years. Marcus was fired within 2 weeks. Not because of what happened with my job, but because his lies had finally caught up with him. I got the promotion. Linda called me into her office, said the job was mine, that the VP apologized for letting Marcus's accusations create doubt. She said my response to the situation had demonstrated exactly the leadership qualities they needed. I should have felt purely happy. Mostly, I felt exhausted. My parents called asking what happened. Marcus had told them I'd sabotaged him out of jealousy and gotten him fired. I sent them the complete email thread, including his false claims about my client. Let them see for themselves what he'd done. My mom called back crying, said she couldn't believe Marcus would do something like that. My dad was angry, but at Marcus for lying and trying to drag me down instead of building himself up. They wanted me to forgive him, help him find a new job, be the bigger person. I told them I needed space from Marcus. What he'd done wasn't sibling rivalry, it was an attempt to destroy my career through systematic lies. 3 months passed. I settled into my new role, exceeded every target, built an incredible team. Marcus's name stopped coming up at work. Then he called me. He'd been unemployed since getting fired, struggling to find anything because his former employer wouldn't give him a reference. He was close to losing his apartment. He said he needed help, that he knew he'd messed up, but he was desperate. Asked if I could help him find a job, put in a good word somewhere, use my connections. I sat there with the phone pressed to my ear, thinking about everything he'd done, the lies he'd told about me, the false claims about my clients, how close he'd come to derailing everything I'd worked for. I told him no. He begged, said he was my brother. I said he stopped being my brother when he decided destroying me was worth a promotion. He said people make mistakes. I said, a mistake is sending an email to the wrong person. What he did was calculated and malicious over weeks. He shouted that he was jealous, that I was always the successful one, that he just wanted something that was his for once. I told him he'd tried to take what was mine instead of earning his own success. The line went quiet. He said he was really sorry. I said I believed he was sorry he got caught and it backfired, but I didn't believe he was sorry for what he did to me. I hung up. My mom called an hour later saying I was being cruel, that Marcus was family, that I should help him. I reminded her he tried to destroy my career, lied about me to my boss, fabricated stories about my clients. She said he was my brother and he was struggling. I said he was struggling because of choices he made that I wasn't responsible for fixing the consequences of his actions. She asked when I became so cold. That hurt, but I didn't back down. I told her I became protective of what I'd earned, that Marcus had every opportunity to succeed on his own, but chose to try to tear me down instead. The next family gathering was incredibly awkward. Marcus didn't show up. My parents were distant. My younger sister Amanda pulled me aside and told me she understood why I wasn't helping him. Said he'd done the same thing to her in high school, told her guidance counselor she was cheating when she got better grades than him, almost cost her a scholarship. Mom and Dad made her forgive him then too. I'd never known that. Marcus had a pattern of this behavior going back years, and our parents had enabled it by always pushing for forgiveness without requiring accountability. 6 months after the promotion, my team won a major industry award. The recognition was huge, featured in business magazines, speaking invitations to conferences, the whole thing. Marcus sent me a text congratulating me, said I deserved it. I didn't respond. A year passed. I got promoted again to vice president, youngest VP in company history. My parents came to the celebration dinner, proud but still uncomfortable about Marcus. My mom mentioned he was doing better, found a job at a small firm with lower pay, but he was working. My dad suggested maybe I could reach out, let him know I was proud of him for getting back on his feet. I said maybe he could reach out to me and actually apologize for what he did. They didn't push after that. 2 years after everything happened, I ran into Marcus at a coffee shop. He was with a woman I didn't recognize, laughing at something on his phone. He looked healthier, less stressed. He saw me and his expression changed. Not angry, just sad. We made awkward small talk. He introduced his girlfriend, asked about my job. I asked about his. As I was leaving, he stopped me, said he knew he'd screwed up badly, that he knew I had no reason to forgive him, but he wanted me to know he'd been working on himself, actually going to therapy, dealing with his jealousy issues instead of taking them out on others. He said he was genuinely proud of what I'd accomplished, that he knew he'd tried to destroy it, but watching me succeed anyway taught him that tearing others down doesn't build you up. It was the most honest thing he'd ever said to me. I thanked him for saying it. He said he didn't expect us to be close again, just wanted me to know. We went our separate ways. I felt something release in my chest that had been tight for 2 years. 3 years after the promotion incident, my company merged with a larger firm. My role expanded massively. I was overseeing multiple divisions across 3 states. During the transition, I found out Marcus's small firm was being acquired by our competitor. He'd worked his way up to senior position through actual merit this time. The acquisition made him a director at the new combined company. He'd finally achieved the success he'd been chasing, but he'd done it the right way. We ended up at the same industry conference months later, sat at the same table during the awards dinner through pure coincidence. The conversation was professional but not hostile. During a quiet moment, he told me I could have destroyed him completely. When he got fired, I had all that evidence of his exaggerations and lies. I could have made sure he never worked in this industry again. I admitted I'd thought about it, but I didn't want to be someone who ruins lives even when they tried to ruin mine. He said he wouldn't have been that generous. I said I knew. We didn't become close after that, didn't go back to being the siblings we were before, but we reached a place of mutual respect and occasional professional courtesy. My parents were relieved. They'd spent 3 years navigating awkward family gatherings, trying to maintain relationships with both of us. Now they could relax. Amanda told me she was proud of how I'd handled everything, said watching me stand up for myself inspired her to set boundaries with toxic people in her own life. 5 years after Marcus tried to steal my promotion, I was appointed to the executive board. The press release went out, and I got hundreds of congratulatory messages. One was from Marcus saying I'd earned everything I had and he was proud to be my brother. I sent back a simple thank you, said it meant something. It wasn't forgiveness exactly, more like acknowledgement that we'd both grown past who we were during that awful period. The younger analysts at my company sometimes ask me about dealing with competition and office politics. I tell them to focus on their work, build genuine relationships, let results speak for themselves. But I also tell them about protecting what they've earned, about documenting everything, about not being naive when someone shows you who they really are. Some competition is healthy, some is destructive. Learning to tell the difference matters. Marcus's attempt to sabotage me taught me that lesson better than any business school course. It made me stronger, more strategic, more careful about who I trust. 7 years later, I still have that email thread saved in a folder. I look at it sometimes when making difficult decisions, reminding myself of what I survived and how I handled it. I could have helped Marcus when he was desperate. Part of me wanted to because he's my brother and I was raised to help family. But helping him then would have taught him his actions didn't have real consequences, that he could try to destroy someone and still be rescued when it backfired. Letting him struggle taught him something more valuable, that success has to be earned, honestly, that shortcuts and sabotage eventually catch up with you, that rebuilding takes longer than building it right the first time. He's a better person now for having learned that lesson. We have a relationship based on mutual respect instead of childhood dynamics and parental expectations. It's not the sibling relationship I once hoped for, but it's real and honest. Sometimes that's better than fake closeness built on sweeping bad behavior under the rug. Looking back, Marcus trying to steal my promotion was one of the worst and best things that happened to me. Worst because of the stress and betrayal. Best because it taught me exactly how strong I was and what I was willing to fight for. I built my career on merit. He tried to steal it through manipulation. The fact that I'm where I am while he had to completely rebuild shows which approach actually works long term. Thanks for listening this whole story. If you made it to the end, drop a like. It means more than you know.